Made possible through support from ARC Thrift Stores, the ARC of Aurora, Developmental Pathways, and PASCO, Personal Assistance Services of Colorado. THINK+change talks. People with disabilities who live in the U.S. are 2.5 times as likely to be victims of violent crimes as those without disabilities, and 3 times as likely to be targets of rape, robbery, or aggravated assault. Victimization and people with disabilities, it's real. A series of different perspectives. Trafficking.
My name is Petri Brill, and I am an advocate with the ARC of Aurora in the state of Colorado. We work with persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including those who have been victims of trafficking. It does surprise a lot of people when they hear that this is a prevalent issue among the disability community, but it really is true exploitation at its most concrete. 2 clients that I work with, they're brothers. One brother owns the home, the other brother lives in the home. There are a lot of stipulations for the brother to remain in the home. And it does involve cleaning. It involves, working on the house. And in fact, while threatening for him, the threat is, can he remain in the home or not, right? That's what's held over his head, but so is food. And his food is withheld quite often if he doesn't do what his older brother is asking him to do. So the tasks that he's asked to do to maintain the home, to kind of keep the home updated and even livable, aren't matching his abilities physically. Not to mention, a lot of these tasks are kind of out of his purview because of his disability. Like one of the examples was the refrigerator went out, and he was asked to fix the refrigerator. That's not possible. Here's this older gentleman he's medically fragile, physically frail, and then on top of that, disabilities, living, kind of under constant fear that at any given moment he could be kicked out of the home and be homeless. Where would he go? He has no other family. He didn't really have any connection to resources. So, you can imagine that kind of fear would drive you to do whatever you have to do to keep a roof over your head. It's infuriating because we're supposed to be taking care of each other, just in general as humans, right? And then on top of it, we have a vulnerable population that is trusting on other people to protect their best interests. And I really do think it's a breakdown in ethics and in morals to victimize the most vulnerable people in our population. It's almost like a trusted person in their life, right? A consistent person. It becomes normalized. And so then they don't tell, they don't share what's happening. And that's the exact avenue that these perpetrators are hoping for, because then once it becomes somewhat normalized for the client or the person with a disability, that's their in for it to continue for as long as they want it to. It's shameful. It just completely takes away, dignity and humanity from people who entrust their care, their supports, their protections in others.
In Colorado, individuals with disabilities have been trafficked for both sex and for labor. There have been numerous cases of individuals with disabilities being subjected to labor trafficking, particularly in sort of low-skilled labor that might not be highly monitored and where the trafficking might not be noticed. My name is Pat. I'm a lawyer with Colorado Legal Services, and I head up our Survivor Services unit, which includes an anti-human trafficking project. The federal and state definitions of human trafficking involve forced or coerced labor. by an individual, including potentially forced or coerced commercial sex or commercial sex involving minors. So in terms of the actual definition of trafficking, there's some sort of compelled labor involved where somebody is being forced to provide sexual services or other labor against their will. Individuals with disabilities are extremely vulnerable to human trafficking because they can be tricked into providing services or do not know how to respond, how to report it, maybe have difficulty articulating what exactly is happening, may have been tricked by somebody they believe is a friend, and so forth. So there are many different ways trafficking can happen. There's often related to trafficking some sort of abuse of benefits, and so there's that vulnerability. So sometimes an individual has their benefits being taken from them, but they're also being forced to clean houses or work on a farm or sell sexual services. So it's often the case that the benefits abuse, benefits fraud is combined with the labor or sex trafficking. So for any victim, there's a sense of betrayal. There could be extreme fear and anxiousness because they're afraid of retaliation from the trafficker. There can be shame if they blame themselves for having gotten into the situation. Just disillusionment that somebody they thought was going to help them hasn't. I mean, I think that's fairly universal. For people with disabilities, it can be very confusing that somebody they thought were taking care of them ended up betraying them. Might make it difficult in the future to kind of figure out how to try to return to their daily life. If we allow standards to be lowered, labor standards, societal standards, if we allow it to be lowered for some people, it undermines all of society. That if we allow people with disabilities to be exploited, who's next? It's, we need to have standards for treatment of employees, treatment of our fellow humans in society. The general public is so important in identifying trafficking. There have been so many instances where somebody just noticed something was not right and found help, reported it, found a hotline, found an advocacy organization. So even if they don't know the definitions, even if they're not professional in whatever topic, it's so important that the general public be aware of just situations that don't look right. Supportive services are very important. We've seen individuals with disabilities and from the general public who just really undergo a transformation with support, especially case management support. They can recover, they can become stronger than ever.
For more information or to find support if you are a victim with a disability, contact the ARC's National Center on Criminal Justice and Disability, www.thearc.org/NCCJD or 800-433-5255. THINK+change. Talks, trainings, and tools to help in your work for or with people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities. Learn more at www.thinkchange.training.